Friends, I have to say it's a real joy to be back again at conference. It feels all the better because this is the first time we've been able to gather together in person since the pandemic changed all of our lives. And without giving away my age, for veterans like me who first joined the party many decades ago when we needed far smaller venues, it remains a sight to behold that we've been able to gather in such numbers. And with that in mind, it is worth taking a moment to remember that since we last met at conference, that strength and support for our party has grown even further. Let's remember that in the 2019 Westminster election, we secured over 80% of the seats here in Scotland. In May of this year, we increased our share of the vote, increased the number of councillors, and became the largest party and even more councils. And friends, most important of all, we won a landslide at last year's Holyrood election. Together, we secured an independence majority, and with it, the democratic right for the Scottish people to choose their own future. Friends, that record, those results, and that success is only possible because of each and every one of you. Our activists who bring our vision and our values to every corner of Scotland. And we know too that that story of success wouldn't be possible without the character, the competence, the calm of our party leader, Scotland's First Minister. At a time of such challenge and crisis, let me tell you, friends, that we're very lucky to have that leadership. We're very lucky to have Nicola Sturgeon. Because, conference, trust me on this, you don't have to spend too long at Westminster these days to realise what happens when that kind of solid leadership is literally nowhere to be found in government in Whitehall. Now, my job as your Westminster leader is to stand up here and give you all an update of events in London. Now, in fairness, it's a hard enough job at the best of times, but honestly, this year, especially with the chaos of the last few weeks, I barely know where to start. They often say that first impressions are important in any new job. Well, only a matter of weeks into their new roles, the disastrous duo of Liz Truss and Kwasi have crashed the economy, sent the pound plummeting, put pension funds at risk, and created mayhem for mortgage holders. The Bank of England are having to spend up to £65 billion to prop up the gilt market, to stop pension funds from holding, and all because of the chaos caused by Truss and Kwarteng. The truth is, the new Prime Minister and her new Chancellor have made the worst first impression in the history of UK politics. Because the inequality and the incompetence of the budget will go down as one of the worst financial interventions in modern history. But by the way, don't simply take my word for it. Just ask the mini-budget's very newest critic, Douglas Ross. But, conference, mind you, be quick, because no doubt he'll change his mind again before long, perhaps before the end of this conference speech. You know, there was at least one Tory who had the inside track on the disarray that would unfold. Now, I promise you that this will be the first and definitively the last time I'll ever quote Rishi Sunak at an SNP conference, but credit where it's due. He was right when he warned that the plans of Liz Truss were fairy tale economics. But what was once fairy tale economics used to bribe voters from the Tory members last summer has become everyone else's nightmare this autumn and winter. Because these aren't distant decisions on financial markets. The chaos of their choices will impact directly and painfully on ordinary households. Higher interest rates means higher mortgage costs. A weaker pound means food and fuel prices will go up even further. And the blinding incompetence of it will make it lean a longer and deeper recession. Tory incompetence comes with a massive price, and it will all be paid for the only way the Tories know how, by cutting public services and pushing more of our people into poverty. Already, they are gearing up to make real terms cuts to benefits in this middle of the cost of living crisis. And on the very same morning that they finally U-turned on their tax cut for the super rich, the Tories slipped out the real announcement that they would be slashing public services by £18 billion every year. Friends, the last decade of Tory austerity was only the start. The Resolution Foundation has predicted that the Chancellor's choices would mean cuts of £47 billion by the middle of this decade. Cuts at least as big as those by the original austerity Chancellor, George Orban. It turns out that the new Tory plan is the same as the old Tory plan, austerity 2.0. So, conference, here's a test for the new Conservative rebels who are magically multiplying by the day. If they've any sense of morality, if they have any backbone, they will join us in stopping any real terms cuts to benefits and any return to austerity. Conference, their Chancellor even had the cheek to say that the immorality at the heart of his budget was only a distraction. A distraction, for goodness sake. But those in Scotland aren't distracted one little bit. We've got the message loud and clear during the shambles of the last few weeks. As our own Alison Thulis described it, this is now broken Britain. Your homes, your pensions, your incomes are not safe under Westminster control. It is, friends, a cost, a risk, a price that Scotland can't afford to pay any longer. Because, conference, the reality is the chaos of the last few weeks is now no exception. It has become the new normal of British politics. A pattern of constant crisis now defines Westminster. It started when they boarded the big red Brexit bus in 2016, and they've been driving towards disaster ever since. We all thought that it would be Boris Johnson who would eventually drive it over the cliff. Well, in fairness, he did come pretty close. But it turns out he has left Truss and Kwarteng to drive the UK economy over the cliff edge. And the sheer stupidity of their grand plan is becoming clearer. Exit the EU only to fall into the arms of the International Monetary Fund. And who can forget that these are the same people who once promised to take back control? Well, the last few weeks are the clearest evidence as just how dangerously they have lost control. We are now left with the remaining rump of a desperate Tory party, reckless right-wing wreckers who should never be allowed anywhere near the privilege of power ever again. So let us, at this conference, make a promise of our own. Let's never allow them control over our lives, ever to have control over the Scottish people ever again. Not for one term, not even for a decade. Let's make sure that we win our independence and finally get rid of Westminster Tory governments for good. Conference, when we finally do get rid of them, we know the scale of the opportunities that independence will offer. But we only have to look at the current context. Scotland is energy rich. We simply shouldn't be facing an energy emergency. We shouldn't have cold homes and soaring bills. We produce 6 times more gas than we consume, and nearly 100% of the equivalent of our electricity consumption already comes from renewables. This is Scotland's energy, and it should serve Scotland's people. But we need to take the Westminster handbrake off Scotland's green energy potential. Yesterday, the Westminster Group launched a new report commissioned by myself, Stephen Flynn and Alan Brown, mapping out the road ahead and the opportunity before us. From offshore and onshore wind, hydrogen, solar, tidal and carbon capture, we have a golden opportunity to lead an energy transition that secures net zero, enhances energy security and lowers energy costs for consumers. By 2050, by expanding Scotland's renewable capacity and by becoming a green hydrogen exporter, we have the chance to pump £34 billion into the Scottish economy every single year. An investment that could sustain 385,000 jobs, dwarfing the jobs that we have today in the oil and gas industry. This is a real plan for growth, green sustainable growth for the long term. Friends, the anti-growth UK government must stop blocking that plan and its potential at every single turn. Because this is the new green revolution that independence offers. It is what Scotland's future will be driven by, and not solely a green energy revolution, but the power to build a new green industrial strategy too, driving investment and creating jobs. Delivering that greener, prosperous, fairer Scotland is what we strive for. But Conference, that future is only possible if we choose a different path from Westminster. Because if we don't, we will be dragged even further in the wrong direction. There is no better example of that than the B word that barely gets a mention anymore. And I don't mean Boris Johnson. I mean Brexit. The silence, the vow of silence, the omerta of daring to speak Brexit's name needs to finally end. We need to name it and shame it for the disaster it has been. A disaster for our crofters and farmers, for our fishing communities, for our young people. The damage of Brexit will keep on biting unless our country finds its way back to our rightful home in the European Union. At Conference, when it comes to Brexit, I'm afraid I can only think of one sentence more ridiculous than the Tories get Brexit done. And that's Labour's new slogan, make Brexit work. Yeah, never before have so few words made so little sense. The complete conversion of the Labour Party to the Tory hard Brexit Party is a betrayal of working people in Scotland and those right across these islands. And of course, that's not all. As well as pledging their support for Brexit, Labour's other big pledge is never to work with the Scottish National Party. You know, the very same Labour Party that only a few months ago made a string of backroom deals with the Tories here in Scotland. Friends, just think about that for a second. A Labour Party, happy and hungry to do backroom deals with the Tories, but who say they could never work with the people of Scotland that vote for the SNP. And why? And why? Because we happen to believe in our nation's independence. We happen to believe that our people have a right to choose our future. Labour's position is not just an insult to all of us. It is an insult to the many Scottish Labour voters who also believe in independence. Labour are now a Brexit-backing, democracy-denying, Tory-enabling party. As Keir Starmer himself said at his conference, don't forget, don't forgive. Well, Keir, I'm very confident that the Scottish people never will. Conference, the newly formed Better Together coalition of Labour and the Tories carries another major risk. Just like the Internal Market Bill before it, the so-called Brexit Freedom Bill is another blatant power grab on Scotland's Parliament, on our Parliament. Time and time again, Brexit is being used as a blunt Westminster tool to systematically pick apart our Parliament's powers, voted for in a democratic referendum by the people of this country. These Trojan horse Brexit bills give UK ministers the power to act within devolved areas, without the consent of the Scottish Parliament, without the consent of the people of Scotland. This new power grab also carries the real risks that laws protecting rights and standards, like holiday pay, parental leave, the 48-hour week, as well as good air and water quality, will fall away and disappear. And all because the Tories are hell-bent on getting rid of any law, any right, any protection that has the words European Union in it. Well, in Scotland, we value these laws. We value these rights and protections. We value the European Union. And friends, we will find our path back to Europe where we belong when we achieve our independence. Friends, getting back to where we belong feels like an appropriate theme for this weekend, because as we gather here, we remember and celebrate the remarkable life of Ian Hamilton, the man who liberated Scotland's stone of destiny and brought it home to where it rightfully belongs. Ian's life is a rich reminder of those who came before us, those who first blazed the trail for our country's independence. His was a life full of political purpose, a life and a vision that stands in stark contrast to what passes for politics in Westminster these days. Because in many ways, the constant crisis at Westminster in the last few weeks and over the last number of years stems from the truth that it has no clear path and no clear purpose. They are leaderless, they are lost. But thankfully for Scotland, we no longer have to be bound by their choices and their control. We have the chance of a different choice, the choice of a different future, because we can't and we will not be shackled to the shambles that Westminster has become. With independence, we have a clear purpose and a clear path. Ian Hamilton brought home the stone of destiny. My purpose, friends, is to lead our SNP MPs out of the doors of Westminster for the very last time and come home to our independent nation. So friends, for Ian Hamilton and for all those that have gone before, for those of us in Scotland today, but most importantly for future generations, let's finish the job. Let's finish the journey and finally put a finish of Westminster control for good. Let's build that greener, wealthier, fairer Scotland. Let's build a new Scotland, an independent Scotland. Conference, thank you.